Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Karim. I am your host, Karim Sirajuddin. Dr. Zeeshan Tayeb joins me today. He's a colleague, a friend, and I wanted to have him on today because of this whole corona scare that's happening everywhere. I figured, let's get some questions asked to some people that know better than me. And Dr. Zeeshan, thank you for making the time to show up today.
Absolutely, Brother Karim. I'm honored that you would actually have thought about me to kind of help out with something like this. And it'll be my honor to try to help out on a greater scale than what I'm doing here in the local community and within my practice paradigm that I have here in Cincinnati, Ohio.
What do we know and what do we still not know about the coronavirus? I mean, is it something that we don't understand, like as far as, what you know in the medical industry? Is it like a completely new thing, or is it actually a strain of existing viruses? And is it something that we are actually equipped as far as a medical industry in the United States to address in a timely fashion? What are your thoughts about that? And what can you tell us about the general kind of atmosphere or climate in the medical industry, to your knowledge?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Karim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It is an existing virus, right? Or there's like a spectrum of these viruses, right? And it is something that, in a sense, has been around, but there's been, a mutation. So back in 2003, there was the SARS, the severe acute respiratory syndrome. And then there was also the MERS, which is the Mediterranean version of it. And now you have the COVID-19. The virus is something that has been known, but there is a little nuance to it. So it's not that we're completely blind to it, but there are definitely nuances to it that definitely play a role with how we're supposed to be approaching or how we could approach this specific virus. So what we do know about it at this point is that if you look at some of the recent statistics, it's like over 114 countries that are affected. There's like over 4,000 deaths. Maybe a couple months ago, people were talking about it on an epidemic level, but now we're looking at it as potentially a pandemic.
What's the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic in the medical sense?
Yeah, so an epidemic is basically something that's going to be a little bit more confined or localized. You could say that it's in one specific area. Pandemic is when it actually kind of crosses borders. It gets different countries and so on. According to what I understand about it is that this is a pandemic, and so definitely, and you can see with all the actions or the reactions of what's happening. It's not just here in the United States of America.
Right. So today is March 14th, by the way, 2020. And so this is why, for example, Trump, made the decision to have no flights in and out of Europe. And I think recently, just today, it was applied also to the UK. So this is because it is a pandemic. We still don't know how many people have it in the US. We don't know how easily we're spreading it, but we are taking some of these preventatives. I mean, I'm always visiting the Center for Disease and Control website, and they're making it sound like, just basically it's as if it's a really bad cold going around. Now, is that, do you think they're kind of reducing the impact of this virus, or is that really the case from what you know? Like, it's really just a cold. And I guess the second part to that question is, how come elderly people are more affected? Like, because I'm freaked out about my kids, and what if they get sick, and how come it seems to be a higher risk for elderly people for death?
So Karim, I'll back up for just 1 second and kind of go through a couple of the basics in terms of like how it's presenting, at least in stage 1. So one of the key things to recognize on this one is that there is like a stage 1, 2, and 3. And I'll go in through a little bit of the science, and for those that are want to kind of geek out on some of the science, I'll mention just like a little few points on it. Some of the bare essentials to recognize is that you have anywhere from a 2-day to a 2-week like incubation period. Okay, and so sometimes the stage 1 symptoms present, which are what you have for a common cold. You could have like a fever, could be low grade, just depending on a person's immune system. Chills, night sweats, sore throat, cough. Plus or minus with the runny nose. That is one of the nuances, by the way, with this one, is that you have more of a dry cough as opposed to a productive cough. And then the runny nose is minimal. And then you can get a little bit of shortness of breath along with this virus. But during that, most of the people that are getting it, at least in that early phase, or it's usually about 2 to 4 days, and they start feeling like they just have a common cold. And that's how a lot of people are kind of feeling. The other thing to also know is that it is transmitted, through like respiratory or aerosol droplets. Okay. It is a zoonotic, which means that it actually came from animals first, and then it gets transmitted to humans. So a human had to have been in contact with an animal to have gotten it in the first place. And then humans, again, a type of animal, I guess, in a sense. And so they are able to then transmit it to one another. You have, if you sneeze or cough or you touch something, this one typically will actually hang around a lot longer on other surfaces, even up to 24 hours if not clean. Okay, and so that's one thing that kind of makes this one a little bit more interesting, because a lot of the other ones may fall off in just a few hours, the other like viruses. This one happens to, stick around a lot longer. And part of it has to do with its makeup. It's a glycoprotein, or the whole genome of this is actually, encompassed or enveloped in a glycoprotein. And then there's a little smear of fat that kind of sits on top, and it actually gives this specific virus its interesting shape. All right, and that's and it has these little spikes sticking up, and that's why it was known as the coronavirus. That shape actually plays a very interesting role because it allows it to attach to the human cells. So this virus specifically, once it attaches, part of this genome in there is blocking out or masking itself from the human's immune system. And then another part of it is doing this viral replication. Okay, so this is another nuance with the virus works, hence that there's stage 1 and a stage 2 and a stage 3 in terms of its presentation. Okay, so stage 1, if your body can handle it, right, in a sense get rid of it, you'll in a sense be okay, and you would have just thought it was a common cold, right? And if you never got tested, you would have never really known that you had it. Now, interestingly enough, with the way I guess a lot of us are, maybe we're not always the healthiest anymore. It's because of the kind of toxins that we're exposed to in our life, the ionizing radiation, the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, type of lifestyles that we live, right? Different levels of stress and so on, right? We could get to what's known as like stage 2, which is basically between days 14 and 24, where this virus actually sits quietly, or it's in its latent phase, where you could get a decrease in terms of its presentation or its symptoms. And at this point, it's accumulating in the lung. The virus then continues to replicate, once again, based on a person's immune function, right? Now, we did say that this virus can hide, but can it hide forever, right? Obviously, right now, we're saying that, yeah, it can't hide forever, because there are people that, in a sense, that have had it are getting better, or they're not dying, okay? Then what can happen is that you could go to a stage 3, right? And that's where you, at this point, because it was sitting there in the lungs, you can end up with like severe lung damage. And that can manifest itself in many different ways. Now, again, on a more scientific level here, we're looking at, what's known as a cytokine storm. And that's basically your immune system sending out a ton of anti-inflammatory cells. It's a way to try to combat, what is taking place, right? Right. There's this virus that's basically triggering off all of this inflammation, and your body is basically just trying to drop bombs on it. So it's just sending out all of its fighting cells, your T cells, your B cells. And so you have this thing known as a cytokine storm. And what this does is, because there's so much stuff going on here in the lungs, your lungs, in a sense, now are, kind of trying to fight the fight.
It's like a biological war zone.
Exactly. So there's a lot of, stuff taking place over here. And so what can happen? There's one of two things, right? So now you have stage 3, which could be its mild form, where your body is able to, in a sense, handle this. You're healthy. You're taking antioxidants. You're doing these other things to kind of help clean out the lung, right? And so about 85% of people may end up with, maybe like a pneumonia, or something that, or just some smaller like lung infection, essentially. And you're able to move on. There's a 15% of the population, okay, and this is to kind of go back to that original question, who, in a sense, are high-risk people, or who should be concerned. It's people that don't have developed immune systems, or are living lifestyles that could compromise their immune system. So for the first part, it's basically, children that are probably less than a year old that don't have developed immune systems, okay? And then you have people that are, living, lifestyles that we would normally not want to I guess in a sense, we these are lifestyles that we should be avoiding. Okay, so high sugar, all of these toxins that I had aforementioned. You have people that drink alcohol. They're smokers and so on. Okay, or just even other health issues that are not necessarily managed appropriately, right? And so then these people, okay, are susceptible to having a severe stage 3. Okay. And so between 40 and 60, that risk goes up. And then after 60, it goes up a lot more. And that has to do, in a sense, with quote unquote normal aging process, because your immune system, in a sense, is not going to be as formidable as it would have been when you were in your healthier times. So in this case, you could end up with like pneumonia. You could end up with like a pulmonary embolism or some form of thrombosis, which is like where your blood clots, okay, and so you could end up with heart attacks, strokes, or something even known as like multi-organ failure. So this is and a lot of this just has to do with your body not being able to handle these high levels of inflammation. Blood pressure ends up dropping, and that's where people start passing out, and blood flow where it should be going is not going. Heart, kidneys, lungs. Obviously, if you're not getting blood flow to those areas are going to get compromised. Those are the reasons why those specific age groups are at risk, and why lifestyle plays a huge role. Who, in a sense, is going to, make it through this versus who's not.
But right now, statistically speaking, so if I'm 30 years old and I have a really bad immune system because my lifestyle is garbage, I don't exercise, I eat junk, I actually can have a higher risk, just like an elderly person could, based on what you shared?
Yes. So, people that are dealing with like, autoimmune diseases, people that are on, a whole bunch of other, different types of medications because of other illnesses that, that they currently have, people that are on steroids, long term, people that have, had like maybe like a recent cancer, or, they're going through some type of chemotherapeutic regimen, radiation therapy, things like that. Anything where the immune system has been compromised or can be compromised does put a person at higher risk for some type of fatality or increased morbidity or mortality.
So how about people, let's say, they take medicine for diabetes or blood thinners? That doesn't fall into the same category because those don't necessarily decrease your immune system, let's say like chemotherapy or having cancerous agents in your body. Is that accurate?
Partially. So part of it is part of it could be the medication, but part of it could also be the disease process itself. So a diabetic, usually by default, those types of individuals are compromised to some degree. And so those people are, just by definition already at higher risk anyway, whether they're controlled or uncontrolled. Now, obviously, a controlled diabetic is going to be better off than an uncontrolled diabetic. The fact that you are diabetic, your immune system, in a sense, has already been compromised to some level.
So how worried do you think we should be, Dr. Zeeshan, and your fellow doctor colleagues, medical professionals? I mean, Are you guys freaking out too, like on that level, or are you guys like, oh man, the public is just like is there a real reason, in your opinion, that we should be wiping out grocery stores? People are stocking up, like they're really freaking out. I don't know if you're seeing that in Cincinnati, but I mean everything is just gone here. I went to go get milk today for my babies, and it's like there was literally only 1 gallon left. And we were lucky to get it, So, I mean, what's your sense on all this? Do you think it's just the initial hype and fear that our animal instinct to want to survive and our fear of death and lack of resources, this is just kind of that first wave? Or do you think this could be something like for the next 6 months where it's really hard to find toilet paper, hand sanitizer, basic groceries? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's another excellent question. Dealing with a lot of people. Everybody handles things in different ways, Karim. And so my thought on this is that it would be probably unjust for me to, put forth, should you be worried? Should you not be worried? Because for some people, this is a huge concern. And this is not something that's just affecting, obviously here, we just labeled it as a pandemic. And, it's not just here locally. It's not just here in the United States of America, but this is affecting people worldwide. So I think there is a level of concern. right? There should, and there is a level of worry, right? Or there is a level of fear. Do I feel some of it has gone overboard? I do. I feel that in being worried or fearful of, what's to come, or all of these, where people are in a sense being absolutely 120% consumed with not just the virus itself, but, with what the next step should be, what ifs. And as Muslims, we know that, hey, everything happens for a reason. These are different trials and tribulations. These trials and tribulations could be opportunities then to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it's on a physical or on a metaphysical level, and it can serve as a reminder to kind of ground us, right? We have the trust, in Allah that if it's going to hit you, it's going to hit you. If it's going to miss you, it's going to miss you. You're going to get the risk that you're going to get. And if it's not meant for you, it's not going to come. You're going to go when you're going to go. And so a lot of that then kind of provides that consolation of, okay, well, if I know that some of these things are already, in a sense, destined, then I can focus on what I need to do. Because when we're consumed with all of these other things, it also increases our stress levels, right? And what happens when your stress levels go up, right? You set yourself up for being immunocompromised. So, and then when you're and then also those stress levels then lead to us wanting to, in a sense, go into these other ways that we handle problems. Maybe we turn to sugar. Maybe we turn to, overeating. Maybe we turn to alcohol. Maybe we turn back to like some of our other vices, smoking, or other addictions that we may have, further compromising us. We're affecting ourselves, physically and metaphysically.
So I'm hearing you say that, number one, it's good to remember that existentially speaking, it's a wake-up call. It's an alarm bell. And by Allah, it is, because many of us just think life is going to continue to be this, stream of self-indulgence and paying bills and what am I going to watch on Netflix tonight? And then like these things just all of a sudden strike us and they make us remember, oh yeah, I'm mortal. Life isn't perfect. The world is going to have challenges. There's going to be things that remind me that I am such a fragile, needy, dependent creature in the end of the day, and I'm not that powerful. I mean, a little virus can kill me, not breathing for 2 minutes can kill me, So it's like, I think this is one of the points that you're making, and also that we have to be balanced. We don't want to completely neglect it and say, oh, whatever, it's no big deal. It's all a conspiracy theory by, Trump and his cronies for the stock market or whatever. And you don't want to be obsessively consumed by it where you forget that nothing will happen to you unless it's part of Allah's decree. And so that can also give some perhaps comfort in all of this. So trying to, again, be in the middle of take precautions, don't be neglectful, be dutiful, stay clean. Alhamdulillah, Muslims, many of us already pray and wash our hands and our face and our arms and everything 5 times a day. So cleanliness has always been a part of our culture. But some people, for example, washing your hands when you eat and before and after, it was never part of their life. So
absolutely.
Those people, for example, they may need to really heighten that awareness of cleanliness. And, so I'm hearing you say we want to stay in the middle. We want to focus on what we can do, not what we can't do. And we certainly don't want to get consumed with non-evidence-based fears. Like this is going to be an Armageddon and it's going to be, one of like the movies, like 90% of the population is going to get wiped out and, it's just going to be me and my cat. It's like, well, Allahu Alam, right? For all we know, this could slow things down for several months or a year. It could also awaken us to some other beneficial things, but that's really, I think, a good point there on recognizing the physical and metaphysical implications at once. They're not separate.
Yes. So yeah, and just to kind of not necessarily recap, but just to kind of bring back to the forefront or to highlight, the aspect of being worried or not being worried. You even look at, and like you said, you were looking at the CDC recommendations and guidelines and so on. Obviously running a healthcare clinic or a couple of different healthcare clinics, we do have that concern where, we have to make sure that, patients are taken care of, employees are taken care of, we have contingency plans and so on. But if you go and look at some of the handouts that have been made, all of those things that are being put forth on those handouts about, washing your hands and, plus or minus a mask and, what you should be doing on the surface, cleaning surface areas and so on, all of those different recommendations. So this is not necessarily like all specific to just COVID-19. These are just general basic guidelines. So it's always about going back to basics, and the whole thing about a reminder, benefits the believer. In this case for us, this is, an opportunity of us to kind of go back to some of our basics, the kind of things that we should be doing. You alluded to, Muslims praying during the day, hopefully at least 5 times a day, where you go and wash up. It just kind of helps us to, in a sense, be grateful for that opportunity, to know that this type of lifestyle, or the faith that, we have is a true gift, and that it gives us these, this context, like, kind of live within, in terms of, being clean, not just physically, but metaphysically as well. So I think that, yes, I think the worry is valid to a point, right? It's just that whole concept of even that dichotomous relationship that we have with our creator, to kind of live between that hope and fear, or actually more hope and being conscious, right? So, when we say ittaqullah, or, when we're, talking about, fearing Allah, it's being not necessarily being fearful, but just more so of being conscious of Allah, right? So having that consciousness and that hope, we kind of live between that. We should be kind of doing the same thing for the way that we're approaching this virus.
In other words, disasters or tests like this remind us of the very things we should always be conscious of. That life is impermanent, that we are meant to be creatures of honor and cleanliness. I mean, this is in every religion. Cleanliness is godliness, right? And also that self-indulgence, and perhaps the direction that some, societal trends are going, is it's just all about me and fun and goodness and overeating. And, we lose sight perhaps of these daily ethical, cleansing rituals and practices, which also makes us distinct from other mammals and creatures on the planet. The fact that we wear cologne and perfume and take showers, and, obviously we don't respect somebody that shows up to a serious or professional engagement, unkempt and undone, right? That's also part of this. So it is something, that I've definitely been thinking a lot about in that way. And, once I got past the fear of what about my coffee and peanut butter cups, I can't live without those, then it was like, dude, wait a minute, Karim, this is like, you got to really think about this, because what if this goes into a crazy, scary, apocalyptic scenario, but at least the reminder holds true regardless of how this goes, right? Which is never get too comfortable and confident with your ghafla, with your heedlessness and your forgetfulness. I think that's a big point.
I would concur with that. I would agree with that 120%.
So based on what we should be doing, Dr. Zeeshan, you were saying the CDC's guidelines, like that's just by default how to stay a clean human being and increase your immune system and protect yourself from germs and bacteria. So basically all we're getting is the generic advice for any type of virus, whether it was corona or borona or sorona. That's probably what we would need to do anyways, right? It's like, guys, be clean, eat healthy, take care of yourselves biologically. And it's like, yeah, no duh. So there isn't anything unique that we have to do at this time based on what you know.
Correct. I mean, the only thing that's been proposed from a unique standpoint, to my understanding or to my knowledge at this point, is that if there's a suspicion and you're somewhere between maybe that stage 1 and stage 2, you could go and get tested. And the testing can kind of vary. We don't know what the long-term sequelae or the ramifications of having this virus today are going to be. We know that, back in the day when people got, for example, chicken pox, right? And then if you were immunocompromised later on in life, maybe you ended up with like shingles, right? And that could be painful or non-painful. And so, there's this virus that just basically sat latent, the herpes simplex virus. And there was for some people, there was consequences. For some people, they had more dire consequences. For some people, it never really manifested itself again. But there was, and this, through just watching, history, over time, or these like longitudinal studies and so on, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how, as this unfolds, what are going to be some of the long-term sequelae from this, right? And so that's the kind of stuff that today we don't know. But all we can do is, in a sense, live for today if we're given that opportunity. They say that masks and things like that really don't benefit, right? If you yourself have it, put on a mask. There's not a lot of validity in terms of whether, a mask is really helpful in this case. In fact, most of the evidence points against it. If you are going to use something as a protective, There are like these different types of like respirators. There is like something known as an N95 respirator that you can kind of put on it. It helps, it's basically one of those like little air purifiers, but it's for individual use as opposed to those purifiers that you have like in your home or things like that. But using hand sanitizers and things like that, those are things that we should be doing anyway, but probably take it to a different level.
There's none left, Dr. It's sold out everywhere, But let me ask you this. So if I start seeing some of these symptoms of like having a cold, should I just stay home? Should I go to the ER? And isn't it true that most medical facilities in the country currently don't have the equipment or the means to do this test? Is that accurate or?
No, that is true, right? And so there's a specific, once you get to that stage 2, you could get like a sensitive test done, which is like more like a CT scan or an X-ray. But there is like a PCR test, polymerase chain reaction test. It's a test that's run to kind of test to see if you actually have that virus or not. So there are specific tests that can be done, but a lot of people are not necessarily, or I should say a lot of places are not necessarily equipped to do all of that today.
So that's not even necessarily a step we would have to take. Like, oh, I think I might have it. And then you go to your local, hospital and they're like, we don't actually know how to test for this here. So in that case, do we just stay home and like pound vitamin C and drink vitamin water? I mean, what should we do if we think if it seems like we have some of those symptoms?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. The people that have been quarantined, if you do a 2-week quarantine, is that sufficient with a person that is maybe not necessarily in the best of states? Maybe an elderly individual with not the best immune system. No, right? You're going to probably need to have a quarantine actually for 30 days, because if you're looking at stage 1, which is only a few days, stage 2, which kind of takes you through about 3 weeks, and then stage 3, which goes on a little bit over a month. A quarantine that's, where you're not necessarily, in a sense, contagious, right? You might need to do, 30 days. I know some places are only doing like 2 weeks and things like that, and so that might not suffice. So yeah, staying home, just not getting into close quarters and going in, shaking hands and sneezing and coughing. And yeah, there's a ton of recommendations. And this is where like my background, like in, the biohacking world and wellness and things like that kind of come into play. Because I have a massive list of things, that some that are cost effective and some that are not so cost effective that you can do to basically, turn up your immune system, a notch or two.
Let's hear that list.
So a multivitamin, like a good pharmaceutical grade multivitamin, is probably very important, right? Because right now we don't want to take the chance of, lacking any type of micronutrients at this point. We want everything optimized in our system. Vitamin C, right, or absorbic acid, and not all of it's created equal. Right. So there's pharmaceutical grade vitamin C. Recently, now there's different methods on how to deliver different nutrients into your system. And one form is a liposomal vehicle, which is basically using like little nano fat particles where you can put in certain nutrients and things like that and get it delivered into the system. And it's a more effective and efficient way of being able to do that. So just vitamin C or liposomal vitamin C. If you take liposomal vitamin C, you can use lower numbers. But if you're taking vitamin C, just straight up vitamin C, even if it's something over the counter, you're probably gonna have to take several thousand milligrams. If you come down with this, I think from a preventative standpoint, 1,000 or so a day is probably sufficient, plus or minus, depending on a person's situation. I mean, there is a pro-hormone, okay, DHEA. People call it like the stress hormone. Probably the important one here is cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And so having proper levels of DHEA so that you can, mount the response that you need for given amounts of stress that your body is facing on multiple levels, maybe at this point, as well as being able to then convert into different hormones that you need, because you need your other hormones in check to keep yourself balanced. And that's usually one of the core places of how your body is going to respond, to sleep, which you need a lot of during, these stressful times and things like that. Being able to heal, to respond to other potential treatments and so on. So DHEA is important. Then curcumin. Okay, that's it's part of like different people's like traditions and things like that. That's like turmeric, and that's got several different benefits. I can just do the list here so that I don't have to talk about each supplement here individually, although I could if you really want me to. Melatonin is also good because it's a powerful antioxidant. And also, again, like we aforementioned, sleep is going to be very important. So getting proper sleep, not just any type of sleep. So not taking a whole bunch of things like alcohol or whatnot just to go and fall asleep, but to be able to get what we call anabolic or productive sleep, which is like your deep sleep, stage 3 type sleep, and then your REM or rapid eye movement sleep, which is, what can actually help with other cleaning out processes in your body. The deep sleep is what allows your body to recover from, different type of insults and, your day-to-day activity and things like that. Having a probiotic, a lot of your immune system, the majority of your immune system resides in your gut, and so keeping your gut healthy is very important. And so one of the basics or basic fundamental things to kind of keep that going is having a good probiotic. Oregano oil is another huge thing that you don't have to take this consistently, but it's got antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral properties. It's a huge it's in some people's books it's stronger than many antibiotics that are out there. And so I know whenever I travel or I go somewhere or high risk times and things like that, this is something. It's just another staple in my life. There's a whole bunch of other adaptogenics that people can also, start taking. Adaptogenics are basically, things that, if you need to get ramped up, they can ramp you up. And if you need to be ramped or kind of taken down a little bit, it can actually slow you down. So one that I really love is ashwagandha, help with stress levels and things like that. But there are many others. There's Bacopa, Monterey, there's rhodiola, and so there's different ones, but ashwagandha is definitely a really good one.
Are these things that I can find at a local shop? Yeah,
that first list, the multivitamin, vitamin C, kind of going to Walmart and just going and picking it up off the shelf. Probably having it in some ways might be better than nothing, but a lot of those things, when you don't know where they're coming from, you kind of question the purity of what these products are, and so. Then it's like, okay, well, was it really worth actually going and getting that? Is it really doing what it's supposed to be doing? And so I would caution that. But I think at this point, it comes from the standpoint that, okay, if I'm going to make an investment, I'm going to make an investment in something that's probably better for me rather than maybe spending time or money on, getting, the sweets, the sugar, all the salts and all those kind of things.
Got it. And how about things like honey and black seed from an Islamic perspective? Are those useful?
Those things are definitely huge players, right? And there's a lot of, if you look at some of those things, they have a lot of the properties of what some of these other supplements actually have, right? That whole inflammatory process that I was talking about, the whole cytokine storm and all that. There's different things, right? Essentially what that's doing is setting off free radicals, right? Causes insult and injury than other surrounding tissue. And so that's where having these types of things in place gives your body an opportunity not just to fight it, but to also, so not just put out the fire, but help rebuild yourself back up again. So, a couple other ones, I was going to say that are really good. You have glutathione, you have N-acetylcysteine. There's, even now there's, these carbon infused or C60 MCT oils that are really amazing products now. And, this is like supposed to be something that's like 1,700 times like stronger than like vitamin C, having your proper macros, so, your proper intake of, healthy carbs and fats, which is an MCT is just basically medium chain triglyceride, some of the healthiest forms of fats. And then, your amino acids, right? If you don't have your basic amino acids that are the building blocks for your proteins, you really don't have, any your basics to be able to build yourself or build your body back up again.
Yeah, it's like the cement of your building blocks biologically.
Look into the world of peptides. It's probably one of the newest things out in medicine right now that is going to probably, it could be an absolute game changer for the future of medicine. I know that, myself, there's a couple of different peptides that I've started utilizing now that I was just taking for one purpose or another. And I feel like it's manifesting a change on multiple levels, And so when I think about this on a spiritual perspective, you could do fasting with one intention, but you could gain 10 other benefits. You could start doing some form of dhikr, one type of benefit, and you could get 10 other benefits. And so I know that I had, specifically, purchased a couple specific peptides for the trip that I was about to embark on, going to Jordan, Jerusalem, and then Mecca and Medina. And now I just have it sitting here on the side, but I might still take it. But yeah, it was supposed to be something that was supposed to basically just up the ante and kind of take the immune system to a whole different level.
So do you have any websites that maybe we could look online to buy some of these really potent oils and formulas that you shared with us? Do you have any recommendations for the audience, Dr. Zeeshan?
That's an excellent question. So I would say there's tons, right? And so maybe the easiest place to start would just be my website.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have that website in the description of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Please check it out. And Dr. Zeeshan, just text it to me so I can put it up. And and thank you so much for your wonderful feedback and assurance and knowledge. MashaAllah, it's always good to talk to you. Any other final comments or tips you'd like to leave the audience with, sir?
Maybe just kind of reiterating what the two of us were trying to put forth earlier, is that see this as a trial or a tribulation, but more so as an opportunity. Allah tests those whom He loves. This is an opportunity for, even though a virus makes you think of something dirty, this could be a form of purification. And so whether it's physically or metaphysically, I'm not trying to downplay that some people have really been hurt by this, or some people have gotten really sick, or that some people have even died from it. Don't want to downplay any of that. But these are all things that, these are signs or ayahs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is an opportunity for us to, reflect, to turn back, and to kind of go back to a lot of our basics, right? Whether it's physically or metaphysically.
Right. And look, the bottom line is death is the only fact we're all promised. So, that's not going to be the surprise, right? Of like, oh my God, somebody died. It's like, yeah, that's horrible. But it's actually something that everyone's going to go through, regardless of your socioeconomic, racial, backgrounds, right? It's like, that's just a fact of life. And it is a reminder that, we're not going to be here forever, and things don't go your way all the time, and life is more than just paying bills and enjoying your television shows and snacking and socializing and horsing around. It's like, it's one of those wake-up calls or alarm bells of like, wow, there is more to existence, and my existence is far more precious than perhaps our day-to-day pop culture life may sometimes suggest, perhaps.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us, all our brothers and sisters in humankind around the world, and heal us, and also, more importantly, help us gain the wisdom and lessons we are meant to take from this alarm bell that nature is setting for us, right? Because as Allah tells us in the Quran as well, all the corruption we see in the earth and in the seas is because of what we did, and that includes pollution, that includes new viruses, that includes, sexually transmitted diseases that, stay forever, and the statistics of all that stuff increasing. It has sometimes a lot to do with forgetting about the sacred and the sanitizing key concepts that none of us should ever forget.
Subhanallah. Absolutely. Very well said.
Dr. Zeeshan, always a pleasure, sir. I hope to speak
Likewise.
with you again soon, and keep us in your dua. And if you have any extra peanut butter cups, send them my way, inshallah.
Absolutely. All right, Karim. Jazakallah khair, bro.
Thank you again, Zeeshan.